Hello for the Friday Live, and there are three quick things to go over, not much today. Thing number one is that here in the high summer of Sweden, as you can see, the flies have begun, and one of them has worked its way into this room, which is aggravating me. Could not possibly have timed that little incursion better, but they are very annoying. And if you see me lose it and start swatting wildly, you'll know why, because they're usually not down here with me. So that's that one thing. Here's another. A quick mention in the memory of my high school friend, Frank Lorcher, whom I have not seen since 1983 and have talked to briefly here and there in the years, but not very much. One of the people whom I credit greatly with my own, academic and professional development as a peer, and who went on to a kind of fascinating life after graduation. Well, Frank has died of brain cancer after battling it for a couple of years. Some of his close friends, people who were also friends of mine long ago, Joe Workman and Mike Kellogg, attended him and had been close to him in the last couple of years, especially. So I'm very grateful to them, and I want to remember Frank. Well, that's that. Another thing, a friend of mine as well, Keenan, who is not dead, and that is something I'm very grateful for. It's been an eventful past few years, and I would love, of course, to say more than that, which is that I'm really glad to have Keenan back in our lives. So there's that. Then let's see, we've got several other considerations. I know I've spoken a little bit about police matters, and since my last video on that, or where I mentioned it, I did some looking in to discover more about the history of policing and discrimination here in Sweden. As expected by anyone, me included, it's not as rosy a picture as one might have expected or hoped for. The trouble is, of course, is that we have the looming example of the US, kind of sitting over there saying, well, at least it's not like the US. And that's true by a wide margin, in fact, but that doesn't mean that there is no issue here. It doesn't mean that there's, that it is indeed, the wonderful, social democracy paradise with no issues. So I've been looking into it is all I can say, and you should do the same. Thank you very much to Mikhail for first alerting me to some of the statistics in question, and I've been hunting that stuff down since. And should you live here, as I do, I suggest that we start turning our attention to that matter in at least in proactive, if not organized, possibly for later, kind of way. So that's something on my mind as well. Now, here are a couple of other points. The last thing, really, of all the points. I'm making no sense. Here's the last thing I want to talk about, which is the thing I do here in Sweden, how it's gone a little bit and how it hasn't. First of all, I started a company called Adept Play, which is a more generalized name than my company in the US called Adept Press, which was about publishing my games. Adept Press was also associated with running a long-term and somewhat influential website called The Forge, and also had a lot to do with organizing independent role-playing publishing. It was mostly in the US, but as it turned out, my customer base for my books and games and the outreach of The Forge and related activities were far more international than a lot of role-playing companies in the US. And so that means that when I came to Sweden, I actually was able to create a much more international base of support than I might otherwise have done. So what Adept Play does, I'm still publishing my games and stuff, but that's not really its primary purpose. The primary purpose is more about outreach and enjoyment of play. I say the word education. As soon as I use that, poof, it's like educational TV. Everybody the attention just sort of disappears. So pretend I didn't say that. But the idea here is that you may know about role-playing from having done it, or you may not, and merely be familiar with its popular culture depiction, which is quirky, cute, funny, and pretty much pointless, and that's the best depiction. It may be an affectionate depiction, for example, on the Big Bang Theory or something like that. You may be familiar with Roll20, Critical Role, and various other venues or shows that people have created. But again, these are performance for an audience, which is to say you. Those aren't actually the activity. So I really want to share the activity. And so at Adept Play, I present recordings of games that I'm playing, as well as encourage others to do the same. And if not recordings, then at least accounts that are very real world and practical. And what on earth is this? Why would I care? What is this activity? It is effectively the folk version of creating fiction. We don't really have one. We have fan-based versions, which is to say a form of consumerism, like fanfic and stuff like that. We also have any amount of ability to call yourself a creator of fiction or to consider yourself to be doing it if you're making some money off it. In other words, it's fully defined by commerce. This isn't the case for so many things. I mean, you can go and just play sports for fun. And even though we do have professional sports, all the way up to, global extravaganza, it's not considered odd or quirky or somehow even invalid in some fashion if you're not getting paid for it, if you just like to play football or anything else. The same goes for music. If you play music and enjoy it and do so socially, nobody's really expecting that you're validated by getting paid for it. I mean, you could be appreciated. Wow, you get paid for that. It's great. Other people don't, and that's great too. Pull out the guitar. Go ahead and sing a song. I like it when you do that. That doesn't really happen for fiction. And I think that is arbitrary. I think that it is perfectly possible to have folk creation of fiction, and that's what this particular medium does. And as such, small a art form can be taken more seriously than as a side of a particular slice of pop culture or something that is arcane enough or bizarre enough that only the people into it could possibly care. So anyway, Adept Play is where we share what we do. You can see what it actually is, and surprisingly enough, find that it's rather enjoyable, even just to observe. You can also, if you are making tabletop role-playing games, I'm available for consulting. I usually post, with permission, recordings of me doing it, so you can see what that even means. Then finally, we have discussions, and bolstered by backstopped by an ongoing chatter at Discord. We set up seminars, presentations, dialogues, interviews, just to hash out things that may puzzle us about this thing we do, in order to perhaps understand it better, or at least come up with better questions. So those all occur there. The way that I do get paid is through Patreon support. This is a pitch. You want to see me getting a paycheck for any of this, the only way that happens is through Patreon. Sales of my games, and also fees for consulting. Those are definitely, but only the ways that any actual pinga comes my way. So should you be interested in supporting that, I would be deeply appreciative. But if you don't know what any of this role-playing stuff is, you wonder why in the world I would have shifted from being a biology professor to doing this. Trust me, I think it was a good move, after a good solid run, of course, at the former. check out adeptplay.com, and that would be wonderful. So from here in the summer, me and flies, it's only that one, but he's a little persistent little booger right around here. Wish me luck. May have to go into slight annihilation after this. All right. Take care. Stay safe. Take care of one another.